We, the National Football League,
believe Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
There has to be justice. There has to be protests. We have to be heard. As a black man raising black kids in America, I'm scared as hell.
Athletes and their allies are using their celebrity to advocate for social justice.
Do we not see the problem, the disease, the plague that has been with our country for 4 centuries? Black lives matter.
In the wake of George Floyd's death, many are in a new arena speaking out and demanding change.
The only thing that must die is racism. Black lives matter.
Why now is the time for so many to put so much on the line. Tonight, athletes and activism.
You're not going to take away my smile. I'm going to keep on going.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual NBC6 Voices on our Facebook and YouTube pages. I'm Jawan Strader. Well, tonight we're talking about athletes and activism. From Muhammad Ali to Colin Kaepernick, we are seeing more Black athletes out there using their platforms to calls for justice. We've seen players take a knee or wear a protest message on their jerseys, but now we're seeing it more, and the numbers are unprecedented. Now, if you have a question or comment for the athletes about athletes and activism, please add it to our Facebook or our YouTube pages, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. Now, joining us tonight, student athlete Brianna Jackson, who likes to go by Bree, so I'm going to respect that. She's a sophomore at the University of Miami and a member of the University of Miami women's basketball team. Ms. Jackson is from Virginia Beach, Virginia. She's been very vocal in the need for social justice. Also joining us this evening, O.J. McDuffie, a first-round draft pick for the Miami Dolphins in 1993, where he played his entire professional career. He's the co-host of the weekly podcast, The Fish Tank and Dolphins Tales from the Deep. Twan Russell has deep Miami roots. I'm sure you recognize him as well in Miami sports community. He played football at the University of Miami, before joining the Dolphins in 2000. And these days, he's the director of the Dolphins youth and community programs. He is out there doing his thing. Everyone, welcome for this all-important discussion. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And first and foremost, I apologize. We've had some serious technical difficulties, but we had to do our thing. And we made sure that nothing was going to stop us from this all-important discussion, athletes and activism. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jawar.
All right. Okay, well, ladies first. Bree, let's start off with you. I want to talk to you about getting involved in activism. What made you decide to get involved in activism? Okay, I'm having trouble hearing you right now, Bree. Twan and OJ, can you hear Bree?
No, we cannot.
You cannot. Okay, Bree, do you have it on mute?
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, there you go. I got you, Bree. So I wanted to ask you that question again. I apologize. I want to ask you that question again, Bree. What made you decide to get started in activism?
Mainly just my little brother. He's 12, and many may not know that he is also blind and autistic. So I wanted him to be able to grow up in a world that was safe for him to be able to just walk around and be him and not get persecuted for the color of his skin. Amen.
And let's talk about the recent events, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, these incidents that sparked change and angered so many around the world. Your thoughts on what you saw, and you decided to go ahead and take action. And we're going to get to a statement that you actually helped write as well.
Just mainly, I finally had a big enough platform that I could use and do something with it. So I just wanted to use what I have to try to change the little bit I could.
And you've been doing that. I can't believe you're only a sophomore. You're doing this already. And it's all about the youth. And Twan and OJ, you both are former professional athletes. And so what are your thoughts about athletes using their platforms in order to impact change? Because I'm seeing it more so now than I did when you guys were playing.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, when you look at athletes in general, we've been blessed with this platform to be able to play a game that we love or have whatever celebrity we have. And I think we would do this world a disservice if we didn't use our celebrity for change. When you look at my foundation, it was a simple decision. There was a need, and I felt that I was uniquely equipped to solve a problem. I mean, OJ and I have partnered over the years on a center, and he's been a strong activist in South Florida because where much is given, much is required. And I believe that, through our effort and energy, we can make great change. And I think, with what happened recently with, George Floyd, I think that was hard for a lot of athletes to deal with. But it was a boiling point because it was Trayvon Martin, it was Eric Garner, it was Aiyana Jones. I mean, you look at every day, it seemed like there was another African American who was being murdered or killed, and it really ripped you at your soul. And I think we all get there differently. We all approach the issue differently, but we're all fighting against the same thing. We're all fighting for justice and for people to overcome and to be great. And I may do it through education. Someone else might do it through social activism. But I think it's important that if you have a platform, whatever that platform may be, we have to use our platforms to make great change. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying today, that, it just can't be a Black movement. It has to be a world movement where everyone uses their influence and they use their skill set to make change, because it's not going to just be the Black community that makes change. We're going to need our white counterparts. We're going to need, politicians, and everyone's going to have to roll up their sleeves and have hard conversations and get involved to change the challenges that we have in this world. And if we do that, it's going to be great. We're going to be able to figure this thing out. And I was saying right before we got on that I am optimistic that even in all of this craziness and all of this hurt, that we're going to make leaps and bounds of change, that when we look back 10 years from now, we're going to say it's because of these moments and it's because of these people that allowed us to progress and become a better country. And
I sure hope that we are a better country in 10 years. And OJ, let's talk about that a little bit. And let's talk about you using your platform and then the differences, because, I mean, both of you, from your days on the football field, again, I don't remember seeing, as athletes using the platform like they have been doing now, more so. Now, they have been all the way dating back to Muhammad Ali. I mean, you could go back, but seeing what's going on now is a little different.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jawan. I think it's, before it was a bunch of individual athletes that you saw, using their platform and setting up against a lot of different things, social injustice, some of the things that were going on in this country. Now you're seeing multitude of guys, black, white, yellow, green, all different sports, all different everything, that are starting to realize and using their platform and using their opportunities to speak out against social injustice. And I think that's been the biggest difference. You talk about Muhammad Ali, you talk about, guys like that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that came out before, and spoke out, but a lot of times they were by themselves. These guys aren't by themselves anymore, and we're not going to be, as Twan talked about, as older players, we are guys that are going to embrace these guys. When you saw the guys in the NBA come out before, LeBron James guys, when you see the soccer guys that came out, when you saw what happened with the NFL guys who have never spoken out because everybody's so worried, that's when you start to realize, man, this is a different movement. And it should have been addressed a long time ago. But to see these guys doing their thing and using their voice and their platform and not being afraid of the repercussions, because that's been the key, Juan. Everybody's been afraid of the repercussions. It's something that we have to embrace as a generation. I know what my mom, my grandparents, my aunts, I know what they fought for, and it fell on deaf ears. I think what these guys are doing, people are starting to listen a little bit more.
And let's talk about that a little further. Let's talk about those that complain now and say that, hey, athletes, they just need to stick to sports and stick to doing what they should do, what they do best. athletes should just stick to playing basketball or football or baseball, and they should just, quote, shut up and dribble, as we heard one critic say. What are your thoughts about that, Twan?
It's easy to say that when the problem doesn't affect you. You know, I think sometimes people sit and they don't understand the issue. I mean, I have personal friends in my life who've called and they were curious. And when we start having a conversation, they're like, Twan, I never knew that you ever even had a challenge like this. I didn't even know this even existed. And I think what's happened recently is because of social media and because of all the athletes being able to connect and celebrities being able to connect and their voice being unified and pointing in the right direction, we're able to communicate a clear message and say, hey, you know, this is about Black people. And this is not saying that we're against anyone. We're saying that, hey, we all live in the same neighborhood. You know, maybe your house has a challenge and this house has a challenge, but our house is on fire. And how do we put the fire out? And then once we put the fire out, then we can move forward and we can begin to build that house and reconstruct it. And I think once people understand that there's a present issue that is destroying a group of people, and until we fix that issue, we all can't move forward. And I think once people understand that one unique point, that the issue is in the Black community, and it started, you know, in 1619 at the beginning of slavery, and in 1865. You know, you're talking about slavery ending, but then for another, 50 years or however many, another 100 years, 1960? I forget when it was. I think it was 1960s. They stopped segregation. So you're talking not too long ago that Blacks were still being tamed. I call it tamed or controlled. And now there's still remnants of that. There's significant remnants that we've never dealt with as a country. And until we peel the Band-Aid off, until we scrub the room and begin to treat it and understand it as pussy, as dirty, as nasty, and we have to clean it out. And some of it we may even have to cut out until we get to a point where we're dealing with the infection of this country. We're not going to be able to move forward. And I think people are starting to deal with the infection that we have. And once we deal with that infection, we can start giving one another antibiotics to move forward. But we have to deal with the infection that we're dealing with right now. If not, we may have to amputate the limb, and no one wants to do that. So I believe that, if we all work together, and especially the players throughout all the leagues are going in the same direction, we're going to be able to solve this issue.
Amen to that. And I want to go to Bree here for a moment, because Bree, she's been very active. Ms. Jackson, UM is a part, you are, of the SAAC, which is the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. So you helped pen a letter. And in that, I'm going to read that letter, which says, in part, quote, to our Black student athletes, we are listening to you. Your voice matters. We will not be silent. It is time to take action. And united, we will stand together as one. What has the response been? And how do you and your colleagues feel about social activism? Your colleagues saying about you being active with social activism, especially with that being said, Bree.
Well, just like how you said, some people are critics saying, just shut up and dribble a ball, just shut up and run down the field. But it's like, we're still human at the end of the day. We're still people. We still want change. We still want to grow up safely. Like, you could see me walking down the street and not even know I'm a student athlete, and profile me based on the color of my skin or my height and stuff like that. So it's like, at the end of the day, we're not just athletes. We're people that want to live and be prosperous and be safe at the end of the day.
Bree, you're only a sophomore. So where do you go from here as far as activism is concerned as an athlete?
I plan on taking this to the highest platform I can be. My biggest goal and dream is to play professionally in the WNBA overseas. And even when I graduate college, I'm not going to be silent for stuff like this.
And are you getting the support from your coach and many of your teammates that maybe don't look like you?
Yes, absolutely. They all love what I'm doing. My coach just hits me up every day. You're being a great, wonderful woman. Keep up the good work. Like, all my teammates are very supportive of me.
Very good. And OJ, let's get to you now on Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores, who released a statement after George Floyd's death. And we're going to show that statement here on the screen. He wrote in part, quote, "I haven't seen the same outrage from people of influence when the conversation turns to Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and most recently George Floyd. Many people who broadcast their opinions on kneeling or on the hiring of minorities don't seem to have an opinion on the recent murders of these young Black men and women. I lead a group of young men who have the potential to make a real impact in this world. My message to them and anyone else who wants to listen is that honesty, transparency, and empathy go a long way in bringing people together and making change." How do you feel when you hear that from the coach?
I feel like that's my head coach right there. You know what I mean? That is my head coach right there. You know, it's tough for a minority head coach to speak out like that when there's only 4 minority head coaches in the NFL. You know, he's going into his second year, but to feel like, you know, and have the strength and the power to go out there and speak those powerful words, you know, and I heard that from a lot of people like, now that's my head coach. He's always been my head coach. You know, the Dolphins, what they've done in having a minority head coach, a minority GM and Chris Greer, they've done a lot more than what a lot of teams in most leagues have done. But Coach Flo is that guy that's a leader of men and an outspoken gentleman that I've met and hung out with personally that I respect to the utmost. And I was so proud of him to be right away making that statement, not waiting for everybody else to make a statement, but bringing that statement out right away. Where a lot of people wait, you know, okay, we're waiting for this guy to say something, or this guy to say something. Coach Flo was in the forefront of making a statement. And I tell you what, you can tell by the way things are going down here in Miami with that football team, the guys that have come in free agency, the guys we've gotten in the draft, the way this guy is respected, that he's a man. He's a leader of men, and he's a man. And I love how outspoken he can be in such a turbulent climate. It's so divisive to even come out that way. And for him to be that man, he's always been my coach, and he solidified his position as my coach with that statement.
And let's ask Twan the same question. Your thoughts?
I mean, I was on a call with him where he's, you know, where he was communicating what he believed. And I wish I could, you know, go back in time and play for him. There's not very many people in this world that when you hear them, they motivate your heart. And you know, the compassion and the authenticity of the response to me is what moved me the most. And I can serve a man like that. That's a guy I can play for. That's somebody I want to be around. And I think he's the type of person that's going to bring this community to a place that we've never seen, not just on the football field, but on a completely different platform, because he's just a genuine person. And I think he believes it. He wants to be here. And you can tell by the response that he cares about people. You know, when he talks to Dolphin employees, you can tell he cares about the people. He cares about what happens to them. He cares about his family. He's going to be raising his family in this community. And he wants to make sure this community is everything that he wants his boys to be around and ultimately emulate.
Well, he's one of the handful of Black coaches in the NFL. So do you expect any change there with the NFL? I mean, we've been talking about this for years when it comes to Black head coaches and having a seat at the table. As you mentioned, OJ, as far as the general managers are concerned in the league, I mean, it's very far and in between that you see enough people that of color that look like you and me in high level positions in the NFL.
Yeah,
will that change?
Yeah, I hope it does, you know, and not because they're of color, Twan, because they're qualified. There's so many guys out there that are so qualified and that can relate to the players, which are 70% Black. You know what I mean? That's a huge number, man, to just to be able to relate to these guys and be able to understand where they're coming from. And when guys are having a bad day and they can tell them that something's going on back at home, they can relate to that. Some guys just can't relate to what is going on in their lives. But at the same time, though, more importantly, these guys are qualified and still getting passed over. You know, a good friend of mine, Eric Bieniemy, you know, offense coordinator for the Chiefs. They just won a Super Bowl, and he got jumped over by guys that never even had a coordinator position. You know, they were position coaches and never even had that opportunity. he's overqualified. He should be a head coach somewhere. There's so many other guys like him that are in this league that don't get an opportunity. And it really starts with the top. With a lot of the owners, they see a guy that they don't vibe with, that they can't relate with, they can't sit down and have a conversation with, so they're not comfortable with it. You know what I mean? Thank God Stephen Ross sat there and said, look, this guy is qualified. Chris Greer is qualified. And look what they're going to do, you know, in South Florida for the Miami Dolphins. And hopefully what they do will give other owners the impetus to go out and hire qualified minorities that can go out there and do a hell of a job at those positions.
Twan?
And OJ, I think what you kind of alluded to in the National Football League, I think they're starting to have the hard conversations currently. When Roger Goodell comes out and says, hey, we got it wrong and we're sorry. I mean, I don't know about you, man, but I remember watching that feeling like, man, like he said, I'm sorry. When was the last time you saw a leader of $1 billion anything apologize for a mistake to that gratitude? I mean, to that extent. And he came out and it was clear there was not, I don't think there was any hesitancy. I think he really had a contrite heart, and he was speaking on behalf of the National Football League and said we got it wrong. And then also, I think, you know, when you look at our owners, Stephen Ross, he has an organization called Rise where he is forcing the issue. He's forcing the conversation to have the hard conversation. He's forcing people to talk about white and black issues and what does what does being biased mean? And he's forcing people to get comfortable with things they're not comfortable with. And when you start having hard conversations and when you start talking about things that you don't feel comfortable about, eventually you get better. Because I know the 1 or 2 times a week that I have an argument with my wife. I'm just joking.
Don't get in trouble.
But I know this: when me and my wife have a hard conversation and we get it out, I feel better. I'm walking away and I understand her better. I love her more. I'm more comfortable with her. And it's through that transition of that conversation that I'm able to understand her. And I think as these owners start having hard conversations led by Rise, led by other people on the National Football League, and start saying, hey, you know what, let's really look at the details. Let's really talk about things that make everybody feel uncomfortable. People are going to walk out of those situations and feel more comfortable hiring people that are not in their arenas or not in their sphere.
And Bree, I have a question for you. Renee Montgomery, she's the second WNBA player to recently opt out of the game to focus on social justice full time. She follows Maya Moore. So, Bree, could you see yourself following in their footsteps?
I definitely could. Those women, they inspire me very much. I know they love the game of basketball as much as everybody playing basketball, and for them to sit down and focus on what's going on, it's a big step. So I definitely could see myself doing that.
And it's interesting because I was going to ask you that same question along those lines. Who is it that you look up to as far as those athletes out there that are making a difference, especially when it comes to women? I wanted to make sure I had a strong woman on this panel. Thank God I got you, Bree, to join me for this discussion. But I want to hear from you. Who is it that you look up to?
Definitely those two. I've heard of Erica Wheeler's story from her journey of becoming what she is now. Like, it's like so hard to even pick just certain people in the WNBA. Like, they're all just amazing.
Now, school hasn't started yet, Bree. So what are you expecting on campus when campus starts back at the U? Aside from the whole COVID issue that we're dealing with right now, what are you expecting as far as from some of your classmates, some of your peers, as to what you're doing? And you spoke about some of your teammates, but as far as those students on campus, and what do you intend on doing in order to push your message as an athlete?
I definitely plan on staying with SAC the whole time I'm in Miami. I would hope that most of the student athletes decide to take a stand. I hope that most of the normal students decide to take a stand with us. Like, even as a normal college student, you have such a platform to use with your college to make a voice and take a stand against what's going on. So I would hope that my classmates, my peers, people, upperclassmen, lowerclassmen, freshmen coming in. I hope we all come together and say something together.
Amen. And OJ and Twan, I want to talk about Colin Kaepernick. And now it's like, aha, Kaepernick, we owe you an apology. Cap, you were right the whole time. Now, after so much back and forth, after this man was criticized and everything else by so many for being disrespectful, will he be now officially on an NFL team this season? Your thoughts?
I think if he can play the game, if he still has it, I absolutely think he should be playing for NFL team. I personally believe that he has ability. I don't know. I mean, he's been out of the game for almost 4 years. Can he still do it? I'm not sure, but I think he should definitely be given the opportunity to do so. What he has given to society and given to this world, and what he has sacrificed, is going to go down in history as one of the more pivotal moments to, create this change. I mean, he's given up, to this point, his career. He's given up his name in some instances, and now I think he's regained that back as people have understanding. But I think he knew one thing. He knew one thing when he took a knee. He knew that, success is always under construction, and he knew that he needed to make a decision at that moment and stand firm to it. I mean, he could have stopped. I mean, he could have derailed or changed his direction, but he chose to stay with his convictions. And I think that he's made great change. I mean, just in people's heart. Like he's brought the narrative of African Americans being murdered in situations and people dealing with tough things with police brutality. He brought it to the forefront. It became a discussion. It was clear and it was definitive because of one man took a knee, and he has helped this movement get to the place it is right now. And I think that we're all going to remember him for that. Yeah. But 100%, I think he deserves an opportunity to play in the National Football League if he's still able to play.
Yeah, bottom line is this, Twan. There are at minimum 64 quarterbacks in this league. There's a starter and there's a backup. If you can tell me that Colin Kaepernick's not one of the top 64 guys in this league, they're kidding themselves. And the fact that Cap did sacrifice what he sacrificed for making a statement, and now people are coming to realize that what he was talking about had nothing to do with the narrative they wanted to create from the beginning. That was they wanted to create their own narrative, And now we're starting to realize that, like we all realize, that Cap wasn't talking about the flag. He wasn't talking about the military. He was talking about exactly what we've been going through for the last month plus here, but it's been going on for generations. And that's the thing about Cap. Cap can play. He's in his 30s. That's a quarterback position. Quarterbacks are playing to their 40s. If you still have the ability, which I know Cap does, I know he's better than most of the quarterbacks in this league, he should definitely get that opportunity, Jawan. And the fact that he hasn't had the opportunity speaks volumes about what this league did and thought about his initial peaceful protest. And now they want to make amends. I hope he does get an opportunity, because he deserves it. But now everybody's starting to listen to what he was talking about back then and putting the narrative the way it's supposed to have been.
Okay, well, we're winding down toward the end of our discussion. So, Bree, some final words from you on you and your activism as an athlete. What do you want folks to take away from it?
I just want people to realize that student athletes or professional athletes are still people at the end of the day. We still bleed. We still can get hurt. We still have feelings. We need change, not just for us, but for everybody. I just don't want people to see us just as someone who can dribble or someone who can run fast.
Amen. Amen. Are you sure you're not running for president one day? Are you maybe a potential VP pick of Biden? Way to go, Bree. Way to go. And Twan and OJ. Twan, let's start with you and your final thoughts on athletes and activism and using your platforms to get your message across.
I think it's very important that athletes or anyone with a platform presses to make people have a conversation. I believe that through the conversation, these hard conversations, through truth and grace, we're going to be able to solve some problems. Truth hurts. And there's going to be a lot of people that can't handle it, but we also need to bring a measure of grace, give people the opportunity to share. And it may not come out right initially, but when you give someone grace to open their heart, they're going to hear what it sounds like. They're going to understand maybe their heart's not in the right place, and then people will gradually change. It doesn't happen overnight. I think the challenges that we see are learned traits. There are things that people can learn not to do as well. And I think as athletes, we have a great platform to be able to force the conversation, create opportunities for people to communicate. And as long as we have a measure of grace, I think we can overcome this and get through this, where when we get to the other side, that we will be able to look back and say, there's a lot of great people that help make great change in this country.
Amen. Twan, OJ?
Yeah, and you know what, Twan, I want to applaud people like Bree. You know, this younger generation are the difference makers right now. They really are, man. And if they can bring their teammates, their classmates that don't look like them along and have them listen to what they're talking about, then people are going to start hearing things, you know, and it's going to take a lot of people that are seeing what's going on and to make a difference. You know, they're tired of hearing old people like me and Twan, you know, they really are. They've heard us before. But young people like Bree and your initiative and the people that you have that are following and have your back, you know, and I see the people that are applauding what you're doing, and I am one of those guys. You know, if you can get your teammates that don't look like you, your classmates that don't look like you, to listen, and like Twan talked about, talk to them with grace and not with anger or anything like it or hostility, get them to listen, that's when change is going to happen. And I think that's what we're looking forward to, man, because a change is happening. And it starts with the young people like Bree and all these young athletes and people in this community that are making big differences.
Yeah.
OJ, thank you so much. OJ, Twan, Bree, it's up to you, Bree. All the pressure is on you. You're the youngest voice here, but you're also a leader. The pressure is on you to affect change. Thank you so much, all of you, for this all-important conversation. And thank you, everyone out there, for tuning in to this live Voices discussion on athletes and activism. We encourage you to share this with many of your followers out there. Let's engage in a conversation. You heard from our panelists. That's what it's all about. Because in order to create change and impact change, we must start off with that dialogue and that conversation. Thank you so much. Be sure to follow me on Jawan NBC6 on Twitter. Let me know what you think about this conversation. Let me know your thoughts. And you can also follow me on Facebook as well. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, have a great evening. See you tonight on NBC6 News at 11.